recording. All right, so here we go. So we are going over lists, and with this chapter, once we finish, we will officially know everything we need to know to finish building our game. Now, with lists in our game, we use lists for two things: to keep the coordinates of all of the bad guys, and to keep the coordinates and technically angle of all of the arrows that we shoot. So the more bad guys on screen and the more arrows we've shot, the more things in our lists, and that's why when I've played it and I spam my arrows, it slows down because it's keeping track of, it's increasing the list length, right? Because the more items I have on screen, the more things that are in the list. Makes sense, right? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. So, lists are super cool. Okay. So, list is now, we now know, who can name all the variable types that we know? Brand. Okay, so we have string, Brendan, float, integer. What's the fourth one? What? Boolean. Yes. Now we have lists. So a list, you can't just type the word list because that's actually a command. So don't do that. You'll have to do list one. I'll show you what list does. It takes something and makes it into a list. So I can do range of 100 gives me numbers from 0 to 100. If I do list range, it gives me a list of all of those numbers. So that's getting a little ahead. So list one. To create a list, you just need the empty brackets. Now we have parentheses, which is this, which is used for something else called tuples. We're going to go over that later in this chapter. But for right now, it's just the brackets, and it's not the curly brackets. That's for a dictionary, and if we get through everything we need to, that's one of the extra things that we'll cover this semester. A dictionary is like step 2 of lists. So if you don't understand lists, it's really kind of hard to understand dictionaries. But yeah, so lists. This is an empty list. So again, if we're doing a running total type thing where I need to add to a list, I need to start with a blank list. Does that make sense? So I just want a reminder. So if we're doing a running total with numbers, what does total typically need to start as? 0. Unless we're multiplying it, right, then it would need to be at least, then it needs to be what? 1. Now, if I'm doing this with an empty string, so if I'm doing names, how do I start a running total with just, can you put your phone in your bag, Ezra?
Oh, yeah.
How do you do like a running total with strings? Josh, your hand went up? Not parentheses.
No, parentheses count. Whatever they're called. Quotation marks.
Quotation marks. Yep, an empty quotation mark. So that is an empty list and all of that sort of stuff. Any questions on that? Okay. So let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. So you can put really anything you want in a list. So if we do list 1, we're going to do empty brackets. What I tend to do, just for speed's sake, is I will put the 2 brackets, I'll go in, and if I know I'm just adding a bunch of strings together, you know, I'll do that, and then I just type right, as opposed to going list 1. Then I just find it a little faster to do that, but that's up to you guys. So this is our list 1. It's just a bunch of names. I can also do list 2 is I can just have a bunch of numbers. I can mix, so if x is 10 and y is 15, list 3 is x comma y. And I can mix stuff together. So a list can have any type of other variable in it. You can have list 5 as, I think you can have this as, I've never actually done this before. Actually, that's a lie, I have. You can have booleans in there. You can also have a list inside of a list. So I can have list 1, comma, list 2, comma, list 3. Say that again?
Have you named like list something or?
No, it's just the variable. It's just like all the other variables. It's just you want your variable to represent what the variable is. You want the variable name to represent what the variable is. What the value is. So this is called nested lists or a two-dimensional list because there's 2 lists in it. Any questions on how to create a list? Just empty brackets and then fill whatever it is. You notice you do have to separate every element with a comma. The things inside of a list are called elements. So if I'm saying the element in your list is wrong or you have the wrong type of element, that means that it's the individual item in that list. Ezra?
What do we do with a list?
Yeah, well, it's a way to store information. So in our video game, we have a list called bad guys. And this is a list of lists. So 155, comma 65, and then 48, comma 159, and then 65, 8, followed by 1, and then. So for Alan and bad guys, print lit bad guy. So what we do is we have a list of bad guys, and that list contains the x and y coordinates in a list itself of where the bad guys are. So that means every time we're going to cycle through the list, we're going to blit a bad guy at this position, and at that position, and at that position, and at that position. So what we can also do is, actually, let me do it this way. You guys don't have to copy this. Bad guy at Elm 0. So I didn't think that through. Nor did I do it right. Oh, because it shouldn't be -1, it should be minus x. We're going to do this for 10. So what we do here is these are the original starting positions of our bad guys, and then we subtract 1 from the x. That means our bad guy is moving to the left. So we cycle through. We have 154, then 153, then 152. Apparent, whatever. Oh, those are the same. Let's start with the same number, or whatever. So our character is moving to the left, and this is how we move our character to the left. Whatever this number is in our game, that's how many pixels per cycle. Our game starts at 7. If you don't want to hard code that, and you want to have that be a variable that you can change depending on the difficulty, you would have minus bad guy speed, and then you have if something is this, bad guy speed increases or bad guy speed decreases. If you pick up a power up, your bad guys move slower. If you increase in level and you want to get harder, you increase the bad guy speed. Yes, Ezra.
Is that how you would get like bad guys to move randomly? You do like a list and then like random, or you give you like a number and then random ink, and then like
You wanted to move like
one pixel at a time, so that like choosing a random number that's like 1 pixel.
yeah, you can actually, and I've had students do where it's moving left to right normally, but it's going up and down a random number of times. So it's like a bad guy that's like doing something like this across the screen, and then it's harder to shoot him or whatever. But yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you could also variable the speed if you want. So if you want it to always be, you know, super fast, and then when it gets to a certain place, slow down, or just randomly go. Only works if you have the sound effects. So make sure you put that in your game. Any questions so far with lists? Again, this is a little further than originally than I wanted to go right this second, but that's just an example of what we use a list for in the game. Okay, so let me come back up here. Oh, that was almost there. Okay, so let's go with, oh, well, we have all of our lists already there. So we have list 1, which is all of the names. What? Do you have a question, Sonny?
I haven't finished it. I haven't.
The for loop you don't have to finish. That was just an example. So you can just have, so if you just create a list 1 filled with names, so list 1 equals empty brackets, a bunch of strings, and then just fill this in with names. And you'll be all set. What if I wanted to print just Josh? Any idea? Ezra.
Would you do like print element 2 or something, or whatever, element 3? I don't know.
You're actually correct with element 2. So you normally do have to print, but because I'm in the shell, I don't have to print. So I'm just going to type, what you do is you do list 1, the name of the list. Makes sense, right?
Yep.
And because this is a list, you can follow it with certain symbols. If I were to do this, parentheses signify in this format with a word followed by parentheses, signify a function, and we haven't learned functions yet. That's chapter 3, but because I want to make sure we know everything for our game and then functions, we're not gonna learn that right now. If I just have a string followed by parentheses, again, not callable. Callable means function. You call a function when you want a function to run. So what we need to do is we follow it with another set of brackets. And then like Ezra said, it's actually the second object, the second index. Now, I'm going to be very particular in my verbiage here and how I say things. It is not the third thing, it's the third element in the list, but it is the second index because lists start at 0. The first object is a 0. Not 100% sure why that is. However, I have an idea that if you're using binary, what numbers do you use in binary? 0 and 1. So if you had a list of 3 objects and you started at 1, you would have 1 0. You'd have 1 0. Let's just say you had 2 objects in your list. So we had We have hello and world. If we had the first object be 1, we'd have 1 and then 0. That's backwards, right? Why are we going down if we're increasing? So that's my guess. They started with 0 because with only 2 numbers, if you want to get to the second number in something, it would be a 0. Which doesn't make, it makes less sense to have this be 1, index 1, this is index 0, than it does for this to be index 0 and this to be index 1. I don't know, but that's just my guess. Does that make sense? It's better to go 0 to 1 than 1 to 0 if you're increasing in numbers. So, starts with 0. Kind of like range, if you don't put anything in there. So this is index 0. And I'll say what's the 0 index or what is index 0. That means the first object in the list. If I were to say index 9, Mikey, what number object would that be in a list? No. If I said index 9, if index 0 is the first thing, index 9 would be the 10th thing. Yeah. Okay. Everyone, who's got a question? You guys get it so far?
Well, I didn't get the for loop.
The for loop, we're going to get to for loops. That was just an example. You don't need to know those. You don't need to know for loops right now. So, if I wanted to print just Stockton, what would I type? I would type list 1 brackets, and what number would I put in here?
4,
Quattro. So, cuz 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. So, you can also do something like this. Because this is a string, this individual thing is a string, I can concatenate it to another string. So for you guys would have, print Does that make sense? This is something that this next error you're probably going to see a lot. Are there 1001 things in this list? So, list index out of range. This number is the index. Remember that. I'm going to use that a lot. So the 5th thing in a list is index what, Josh V?
The 5th thing.
The 5th thing in a list is index what?
Index 4.
Yes. So, list index out of range. What that's saying is you don't have 1,000 things in this list, and I can't print something that doesn't exist. It's like finding inch 14 on a ruler. Does that work? If you need to scoot back, Peter, a seat, you can.
I was just very much hoping to reach.
No. And the other 2 extension cords are currently being used. Or you're trying to, on a yardstick that's 3 feet, trying to find foot number 4. Right? It just doesn't exist, so you cannot find it, right? Does that make sense? So, if it's out of range, it doesn't exist. You have to do something else, or you have to make your list longer or fix your numbers. Typically what'll happen is you'll have a for loop that's going through, and you won't account for how long something is, how long a list is, you don't properly set up the for loop to stop at the end of the list, and you often get your code will run through, and then at the very end you'll get list index out of range, which is fairly common. So when you have a list index out of range, it just means what you're trying to do is display information or do something with the list index, and that list index just doesn't exist. Typically, like I said, it happens a lot with for loops. Because if you do for x in range 10 print list 1 bracket x, right, it cycles through my whole list and then list index out of range. So if I'm going to 10, so this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 index. Once I get to 7, it's trying to print the 7th thing, or technically the 8th thing in the list, and that doesn't exist, so it freaks out. Now there's ways you can code around this, or you can just, you know, an easy way to get around this is to put length. And what this length does, the length of list 1 is 7. That tells you how many things are in that list, how many elements are in that list. So if I do for x in range 7, what numbers is that? What's the range of 7? What numbers? From what to what? Ezra? 0 to 6. Awesome. Hey, 0 to 6, if I have 7 things in a list, what are my indexes in that list? What's the first one? What's the 7th item? Pretty cool. It's like they coded it to work that way. So, if you just have this, if you do length of list 1 in a for loop, you'll never get that index out of range if you're just working with that loop. Now, if you have 2 lists going at the same time, that's different. Okay, so now list 1. Here we go. Actually, what was list 6? Yeah, that's our list of lists. So we now know how to display just Stockton. What if I wanted to print Stockton in this list? Do you guys remember what you have when you have 2 lists in the same list? You have a list of lists. Do you guys remember what that's called? I gave you 2 names. What, Catherine?
I don't think we ever talked about it.
I did.
I forgot. I don't remember.
We live in a 3D world, not a 2D. So it's a 2-dimensional list because there's 2 lists in it. Or nested lists. I think you can use nested.
Oh, you did talk about nested lists. You said you mentioned it.
Yeah, you did.
Like,
Thank you. See?
You did, yeah.
Like I could go back and watch the video and prove it to you guys. So a 2-dimensional list. So I want to print, I'm going to stop picking on Stockton. I want to print David's name. How would I do that? If this is list 6, list 6 bracket 0. Wait, hang on. If I do 3, so list 1 or list 6 has 3 lists. It's a list of lists. So this whole thing here would be index 0. Then we have a comma. This would be index 1. This is index 2. So list 1 gives us that. Oh, I'm sorry. List 6 bracket 1 gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Does that make sense?
yes.
Doesn't matter that the list is in a list. That is the 3rd element, or that's the 1st element, or the index 1.
So then it learned reference specific parts of the list.
So if I want to print David, first thing I would have to do is list 6 bracket what? 0. Alright. Now that we have just this list, what index is David? So I would then do 3.
Okay, but you have to do it in 2 separate lines.
Nope, you can do it in just this.
No. Oh, so like you don't have to have the list 0 before that, right?
You have to have this. I was doing this to give you an example, to show you, well, list 0 is this. Now that we have this, we can add the 3, and we can get David. Now, what happens?
Can you go further? Like more lists?
Do you guys think I'm going to get an error? Strings have indexes too, and so it gives me the third index, which is the 4th letter in his name.
So you can just keep going and going and going.
Nope, because what makes up the letter I?
Nothing.
So I can't do anything
Well,
else.
you can like stack lists on top of lists on top of lists.
Yes. So if I were to add another index, it gives me out of range. Because,
But what about the strokes?
what about what?
You got a stroke and you might look at. Yeah, it's a list.
No, it's not a list. No. No. Okay. So, if I wanted to display Peter, so I have list 1. I want to display Peter. How do I do that?
Magic.
Yes, magic is one way to do it. Everyone close your eyes and I'll do it real quick. I can only do magic when no one's looking.
Okay.
So I
List 1 bracket.
list 1 bracket 6. Correct. Now what if hang on. Watch this. List 7 equals list 1 times okay. What? That did not happen. Okay, hang on.
That's a big enemy.
Okay, here we go. This is probably going to slow my computer down. I want to print the very last item in this list. What's its index?
Can you do the range?
I don't know what it is though. I don't know how many things are in here.
It's list 6. 6.
List 6.
Trial and error.
List 6. Hang on, why am I not typing? Oh, this is list 7. What were you saying, Catherine? Somebody put your phone away.
Can I just find a word in the dictionary?
Oh, yes, if you're translating, yes. Oh, very impressive.
What is that?
What?
Lenny from this list.
Wait, list 7. So if I have
Wait, you got -1.
because if I have a list, so what is the length of a list that is 1, 2, 3 objects long? 3.
Yeah.
What is the index of the third item?
Len doesn't 0 index.
What?
Len does not 0 index.
Correct. Len does not 0 index.
Which is kind of confusing. It'd just be better if everything is 0 index. Or everything-
Yeah, but that wouldn't tell you. So how many letters are in Peter? But length of Peter is 5. But if it started at 0, it would give you the answer 4.
Yeah, that would make
That's the length. That's how many things are in it. However, there's an easier way than having to pull this function into it. -1 starts at the end. So I actually have it on the board here,
Oh,
but I will write it on
oh, so you can do like -100 for that, but still 50.
whiteboard.
100 from the back.
So if I have a list of hello world, I am alive. That's my attempt at humor with an AI. Set that over there. So I'm going to do this in two different colors. So we have normal indexes. This would be index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4. If you go backwards, this is -1, -2, -3 index, -4, and -5.
Why did you not start with 0?
Yeah,
What?
instead of starting at 0, when you're going back, it starts at -1.
Yeah, because if you started at 0, this is 0.
I guess that makes sense.
So you can't have index 0 be both the first thing and the last thing.
And -0 doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, -0 doesn't exist. So it has to start at -1. Sonny?
What did you write in the circle in the VS3?
Here?
Yes.
That is bracket 0 end bracket. That's just to distinguish that it's a 0, not an O. So I could do hello and a 0. Those look the exact same, so you put a line through it, and then people know it's a 0, not an O. That's why a lot of places you'll see zeros like that on. Okay, not on a keyboard, but I have seen.
When they're like the squares, they're like on like clocks and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, so like that also means does not exist. Remember like kind of college algebra, we did that.
That means does not exist. Oh, I always did this for does not exist. The limit as x approaches infinity of, I don't know, x over x is 1, right? But I can't remember. I can't come up with a function that does not exist off the top of my head because I'm not a math teacher. Also, this pen's awesome. Changes color. Yep. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure how much time we have left. I should probably have the schedule right there.
Unfortunately, I can't check the schedule.
Yeah, good. Okay, so last thing real quick. You can slice a list. Now, there is a difference. We do splice things later. This is, let me make sure. We are slicing this. So we're slicing a list. So list 1. So let's say I just want the first half. Or, you could do days of the week. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going to go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm actually going to put Sunday here because it helps with my example. So let's say I wanted just the weekend. What do you guys consider Friday the weekend?
No.
Why did you try to
Friday?
so great?
Friday 1 and Friday 2.
No.
Friday 1 is like before school. Friday 2 is after.
No, Friday's the weekend.
Friday's the weekend. Okay. So what if I just wanted to display Friday, Saturday, Sunday? I would do brackets again, and I would put a colon. Now a colon means we're cutting the list up. If you don't put anything before the colon, what do you guys think it does? Doesn't concatenate. If I don't tell it where to start, where do you think it starts?
At the beginning.
At the beginning, yeah. So if I don't put anything at the beginning, it starts at the beginning. Same thing. If I don't put anything at the end, what do you think it goes to?
The end.
The end. So if I don't put anything there, what is it going to display, Peter?
All the things.
All the things. Yep. But I want the last 3 things. Oops.
Can you do that with your really large list?
Yes. I don't know why.
I don't know. I just thought it would be fun to see.
You can do it. I won't. So if I do days, bracket, I want just Friday, Saturday, Sunday displayed. What numbers do I put in here? 4. Where do I end? Is that it? Yeah.
Oh.
Wait, what is colon?
Colon means I'm taking a section of the list out.
Wait, could you also start at like -4? Or not -4, negative, what's that, -3?
Yep.
Ah.
What if I wanted the first 5 days of the week?
You could do days.
You can do some magic and go.
Colon 4?
No, days colon. Or
No.
days 5 colon.
It'd actually be days colon 5. Okay, so no homework. We're going to continue to go over lists, and we're going to have some in-class problems tomorrow, just so you guys can get familiar with lists. So no homework for today. Hopefully I'll get your quiz or your test graded by tomorrow. We'll see. Otherwise, have a great day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.